Good morning to all who are joining. I know we're hitting the ground running right after a long holiday weekend. We'll give everyone just a moment or two before we get started. I want to thank everyone who's on time. It's not the easiest thing to do first thing on a Monday morning, but we want to make sure that everybody who wants to be here can have an opportunity to join us. So I'm looking at the clock one more minute and then we'll get started. All right, our numbers are increasing. Over 260 of you so far joining us. Thanks so much. 9:02, I'm starting. So Sign Queen, be prepared to hit the button. All right. Over 270, that's great. Okay, well, this is the longest 1 minute in history. So Sign Queen, if you'd please advance to the next slide. So good morning, everyone. I'm Kristen. I'm part of the executive office team at CSAC, and I'm here just to kind of get us started. Again, thank you for joining us so early after a holiday weekend. Hope everyone's was wonderful. Want to give everyone the reminder that we have a 1-hour webinar scheduled today. We should be wrapping up around 10 o'clock. Want to ask you also, please, instead, to please use the Zoom Q&A app as opposed to using the chat. It's much easier for us to be able to track the questions that you're asking, and we can tie the responses into those questions. So Q&A is the way to go. In case you hadn't seen it already, as you join us, we will be recording today's webinar, and it will be made available on our social media channel on YouTube, which is CA Student Aid. See that down below. We always encourage everyone to follow us and join us on social media. Those are all of our handles down below. And with that, we're going to move to today's agenda. And if you all don't know her, I'm going to introduce our executive director, Dr. Daisy Gonzalez. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristen. Good morning, everyone. It is so great to see all of you today. We have a really incredible agenda, but also it's very dense, meaning we want to get through a lot today. I want to first introduce all the panelists that are here with us today through the form of our agenda, and then just acknowledging them as I give them some rest and they can turn off their cameras. This morning, we just walked you through the welcome and meeting logistics, and we see many of you who are here today. We will be posting a link for you to register for the next few webinars that we have. This is our first All In and Ready webinar. It is a webinar series as California gets ready for our 25-26 financial aid cycle. Joining me shortly to give you a really big welcome is Lorena Rodriguez, the president-elect of CASPA. After she speaks, we will then be transitioning to prepare to really think through what is the information that we need for 25-26 financial aid cycle in the state of California. And joining us is our Deputy Director, Tay Kang, who will be introducing Jeremy Zinger, Executive Senior Advisor to the U.S. Department of Education for FAFSA. From there, we will transition over to a panel led by our Deputy Director, Jake Bribner, who will be introducing two all-star CalSOAP directors in the state of California. You have Matthew Elder and Giselle Paez. And then once we are done with that panel, I want you to really reflect back, and I realize as a part of the panel to introduce the next part of our webinar is actually our chair, Catalina Cifuentes. And then we will end our webinar by walking through reminders, next month webinar theme, and that will be led by our Chief Deputy Catalina Missler. I went through that very quickly, but you are about to experience our first webinar. We would love to hear your feedback at the end of the webinar. We'll probably do a really quick survey, but also just really wanting to make sure that these webinars are spaces where we are presenting real-time information for all of you that you need, and then really thinking through the community of support that is needed here today. As you saw, our webinar theme and the beginning slide is about protecting students and their choices. And so today's webinar actually has two goals. Number one, sharing with you direct information related to 25-26 financial aid cycle. And then two, really focusing in on some of the most vulnerable populations of students in the state of California. These are undocumented students, mixed status families. So I want to ask the team to go to the next slide. I'm joining you this morning on month number 5 for me at the California Student Aid Commission. And every morning I wake up and I'm grateful to serve with the CSAC team, with all of you who are supporting our students on the ground. We have one common really mission in our values, and that's center in making sure that all students in California have access to post-secondary education and that it is affordable to all Californians. Next slide, please. With that in mind, I want to then talk about the next few speakers, and I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to meet Lorena Rodriguez and just spend some time with her, learning about her journey and how it matches the journey of many of our students today. So I'm grateful that she will be speaking right after me. She represents the California Association of Student Financial Aid Advisors. Next slide, please. Really important updates from CSAC. Of course, yesterday we opened up FAFSA CADA in the state of California, but even before then, because of the work that was done by the U.S. Department of Education, many families were already applying, and CSAC saw many applications being turned in, both FAFSA and CADA applications. Really big reminders that you'll get from us today is that we continue to use CADA for mixed status families in the state of California. And that this webinar today is just the first of monthly webinars as we head into September of 2025. So yes, I just took us there. And then, of course, as we head into January, the CSAC team, led by our Chief Deputy Director, and of course, our Deputy Director, Jake Brimner, is really focusing on emergency resources and extending our deadline here in California to April 3rd. This is our priority deadline of 2025. Next slide, please. Joining us in those efforts is an entire implementation work group that was launched last month. And that work group has aligned with CSAC to really focus in on 4 critical needs: extending our hours for our call center and bringing in student workers, extending that deadline, and then really focusing in on high-touch regional outreach across the state of California, and then being able to really focus in on our campaign. And by that, we mean our outreach and communications campaign. This work is really about making sure that our financial aid options are provided to families and students in their preferred language. And then with everything changing around us in real time, making sure that we can deploy outreach urgently and in real time. Next slide, please. This is a sample of the groups that we are working with. So if some of you are here with us today, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your statewide work. I want to go to the next slide and just end my remarks by saying that I woke up this morning thinking about community. We just went through Thanksgiving, and I thought about the journey that many first-generation college students have in general, the journey of students who are low income, who in many ways are waking up and did not have a regular Thanksgiving. I spent some time with some of those students at Southwestern College the week before Thanksgiving break, and it was all of the homeless students, foster youth at that campus. And one of the most important things that I learned in that visit was that they weren't thinking about that holiday break. They were thinking about their next year. And after I finished speaking, they asked me, what do you think I should do as I head into next year? Some of them were not graduating. And I said, number 1, you've got to fill out your FAFSA CADA. We open up December 1st. Number 2, you've got to show the way to that next generation. And so we're so grateful this morning that you are joining us at 9 a.m., that you are here to hear from all of our incredible speakers, including our chair, Catalina Cifuentes, the president of CASFA, and our incredible panelists. So with that, I want to hand it over and ask Lorena to turn on her screen to give her welcome remarks to all of California's financial aid partners.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gonzalez, and thank you everybody for making the time this morning to join us. It is very exciting right after a nice holiday break to come together and just engage the energy that we saved through the time and the good vibes, the good emotions that we had sharing with loved ones, special moments, whether it was a dinner or watching a football game or whatever it is that you do to just recharge and, feel human and understand family dynamics and just navigate life in general, and then come back to this new professional and world and our commitment to our students, and having the financial aid applications being open to our students and how we help them navigate this. As Dr. Gonzalez mentioned, today we're going to really emphasize the protection of our student data and how do we support our students through filing an aid application that enables them to pursue higher education. So as a financial aid administrator over 25 years, I know that we have a shared commitment, not just in the higher education system, but in the K-12 system, right? All of our educational institutions and administrators have a shared commitment to protect our students and to ensure that we build trust and confidence in the systems, to ensure that our students can navigate them with confidence that we care about them, right? And we do this by safeguarding the personal information that they give to us on a daily basis. I know that we manage personal information from all of them. And we need to make sure that we continue to show our students that we care and that we are doing everything possible to stay informed about the different options that they have available to apply for financial aid if they're going into higher education systems. But more importantly, we have to make sure that we continue to build the trust with them, that as we guide them through the process, we are providing a unified message that builds comfort within their families, right? I know that many of you, have encountered families who are hesitant about what this could mean. And if you've been long enough, like I have been long enough in the educational system, you know that we have gone through different stages where fear could even prevent families from not just pursuing higher education, but even pursuing education in general. And so we want to make sure that if we have the opportunity that we are guiding students through processes that we are very well informed about and that we can create those reassurances to our students and our families. This will make sure that, they know that and I continue to say that they know that we care about them, because at the end of the day, whenever we are entrusting our kids to anyone for, whether it's a K-12 or higher education, we're entrusting them for the majority of the time, sometimes the majority of the year, into an institution. We want to make sure that there are people there that are truly, truly caring about them and are going to safeguard them, in that these families are not going to feel that there is that possibility that beyond the financial burden that they're going to have, that there could be other implications to their family. So this year, I want to say that we want to make sure that we are staying informed about all of the different options, including the California Dream application for our mixed status families. And we stay informed about the different safeguards at the federal level for the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA. And we continue to guide our students in a unified message, whether it's financial aid administrators giving out financial aid information about the application process, or K-12 counselors, teachers, right, principals, vice principals, providing information to students to say, it is safe for you to apply for financial aid, and we are all a team that are going to help support you here. Now, when we do this, if we do this in a unified message, they're going to understand that this is truly the process. We want to make sure that there is no fear that is created in students and families, but rather that we tell them, we are the safeguards around you, and we're going to be there as a unified chain to protect you. So I really want to thank everybody here that will be a panelist to present you more information, because all of your contributions matter. All of our contributions would matter as we go ahead and advocate for protection and funding for our students. So thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, and I will go ahead and hand it over to Tay.
Thank you so much, Lorena, for those opening remarks. So as we transition into our next portion of the webinar, I wanted to just provide some highlights on the 25-26 year. We are here now. The financial aid application season is officially open. And I am pleased to announce that as Dr. Gonzalez mentioned earlier, the California Dream Act application is officially open. It opened during the Thanksgiving week. And we have already about 500 applications that have come in, and about 300 of those that have actually been submitted. And included in that are some mixed status family applications that have also come in. Just to highlight for the CADA this year, we have included some of the missing parts of last year's AB 540 section. So the credit hours have been added as part of the AB 540 section of the DREAM Act application. And of course, that was in consultation with many of our public segment offices. We're also making some changes to the AB 540 school report that's consumed by many of our institutions, and also the AB 540 affidavit form itself. Some help text improvements just throughout the application, just so for better ease and transitioning for our students as they read through the application, they have more help text. We also have some screenshots of relevant tax information. That's sometimes very difficult to see the tax questions and align that to the specific tax questions. So we have some snapshots or screenshots of the relevant tax information on the CADA itself. And of course, as we have mentioned, we're maintaining the CADA option for our FAFSA eligible applicants from our mixed status families. And in a future enhancement that's to come to the AB 540 school report, we will also be including 9th and 12th grade enrollment. That's just more information for the AB 540 affidavit confirmation for our institutions. So with that, next slide. So we're going to move on to the section of the 25-26 FAFSA launch. And here with us is Mr. Jeremy Singer. And as you know, for the past 6 months, Jeremy has been serving in the role as a FAFSA executive advisor in the Office of Federal Student Aid to lead the 25-26 FAFSA overall strategy and implementation of the application. To take upon this and very, very important task, he took a temporary leave from his role as president of the College Board to join this effort. So Mr. Singer and his team have been very, very busy the past few months with the multiple phases of beta testing, stakeholder engagement, addressing many of the technical glitches, and also releasing the 25-26 FAFSA earlier than the originally scheduled December 1st date. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Jeremy Singer.
Thank you so much. And good morning, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to share on our progress. First, the headline. The headline is that the FAFSA form is in a significantly better place than it was a year ago, although it's still far from perfect, and I will get into some detail in a minute. We actually expect to hit 1 million submissions sometime tomorrow. So things are moving, and we've had no major issues with the software. And I literally minutes ago, I got today is going to be our largest day. We may get a couple 100,000 submissions today, and the call center support remains strong. Average speed of answer is just over 2 minutes, but nothing like was experienced last year. So all of it's a real tribute to the team at FSA and the Department of Ed and how they responded to what was a very difficult situation last year that you all experienced and had real impact on student and families. So I'm going to go into some detail of how we got here and hopefully leave some time for questions as well, if we can advance the slide one. So what I'm showing here, this is not something particularly unique to our work. I think I've used it in other places. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but let me walk through it because there's a lot in this. So in an ideal world, whatever that form is, if you're booking a travel, a plane ticket, if you're submitting an application to get your driver's license, you hope that the process is so simple and intuitive that a user can complete it without needing any help. And in a minute, I'll walk through some actions we've taken to try to move closer to that ideal state. I do want to here recognize for a moment, and I think this group knows as well as anyone, that the federal government providing billions of dollars in grants and loans is going to, there's a necessary level of detail and process to enact that. And if anyone on this call has ever applied for a home mortgage or a car loan, you can attest that these are involved process. So I'm not trying to at all make excuses. I'm just trying to sort of contextualize. I think I heard some people say, why can't it be automatic, or can it be a minute to do this application? I'm like, well, it's billions of dollars being dispersed, so there needs to be some form of process. With that said, I think the Simplification Act and the great work done by the FSA team the last year, we've made real strides to make it easier on students and families. And I'm hoping you're hearing that from the students who have completed, the students and families who completed the form this year so far. Again, nearing to 1 million. So that's the first one, and we'll talk about that. The second row, you could think of it, the second tier of defense, is giving tools, easy use tools, so that students, contributors, parents can address questions. We want to enable them to self-remediate. Again, I'll talk a little bit about that. If that doesn't work, then the next step is the federal government is lucky enough that there's a whole ecosystem of dedicated individuals and organizations that are aligned to help students and families complete the FAFSA form. And all of you play a major role in that. It's frankly been the most rewarding part of the last 6 months, was getting to work with CBOs and higher ed and K-12. So aligned in what we want to achieve and make it easier and make sure that every student who is eligible for federal aid receives that federal aid. So there were a lot of things that we knew we could do better to equip all these people in the ecosystem to help students and families navigate it. And then finally, the last tier of defense, and I really say last tier, is the contact center. Like, ideally, students don't need, they can go through it. If they need remediation, they can find the help themselves. They can work with all the great partners out there. And then last but least, they call the call center. And that's been our view. Good news is, so far, the demand on the call center has been significantly less. And I think it's a result of your help and all the successes along. Okay, so let's jump to the next slide. So this is about, and I'm not going to, there's too much here to go into detail, but I will go really quick. The team identified real issues, and there were a lot, as you all well know, and tried to very methodically address them over the last year. So I've just talked about a few. So one, I'm sure you're all familiar with, I think it was question 8, was this question about, it's a very confusing concept, and it's in the legislation about if you received a direct unsubsidized loan. And we were finding that accidentally, or students were misinterpreting this question and saying yes when it should have been no. And so there was a whole series of things done. One was it defaulted to no, so hopefully a student wouldn't change that. 2 is if they did change it, you can see the pop-up here saying, hey, are you sure you're not going to be eligible if you click this? And so forth. And there was explainers and so forth. And in a minute, I'll show you the impact of that mitigation. Other things we heard, and again, this is just a highlight, is when the IRS import was done, families weren't sure it was successful. So there's a piece here. For mixed status who need to do the digital attestation, in the past they had to print something and send it in. Now it's moved digitally. There's a lot of help items and so forth. So if you haven't seen the 2526 form, I'd suggest you spend a little time. If we go to the next slide. So these interventions or user experience improvements really had an impact. I'll just focus you on the graph on the far left. So at the beginning of last year, close to 5%, there was, for various reasons, it fluctuated, but around 5% of students were saying yes to the question 8 and not then eligible for federal loan. Many of them would go back and make corrections, or the institution would make corrections, but it was a lot of unnecessary grief and work. And you can see that got well under 1% based on all the interventions I went through. So big lesson here is these things paid off. If you go to the next slide. So hopefully you've all heard by now about beta testing. I think I've been talking endlessly about this for about 4 months. But I'll just tell you, and it really could not have gone better. We had high hopes and it exceeded those hopes. There's some key principles around the beta. One was in software, often you learn things when you move out of testing or development or staging to production. So the environment where users actually interact with the software, something happens, and you can run into issues. So a key principle was on October 1st, we opened the 25-26 form. It was only open to select people, but it was the actual form on the actual software. So when students completed that form, they were completing the actual form. It was being processed. It would create actual ICERs that would go to real colleges who would then ingest them and process them. So that was critical because we want to make sure we didn't, like, well, we say we launched, or you could say we launched a couple weeks ago. We actually opened and launched on October 1st, but it was gated to certain students so that we could test and learn. Another principle was gradually increasing the number of users. I won't go into a lot of detail, but to find bugs or issues, generally you need 10 cases of a particular bug to understand in enough detail that you can fix it. So with 100 users, the prevalence of that bug needs to be 1 in 10 to get 10 users. So that's a really massive bug. But you don't want to just find the 1 in 10. So when we get to 1,000, you're finding the 1 in 100s. When you get to tens of thousands, you're finding the 1 in 1,000s. We're still not finding the 1 in 100,000. So those will continue to come in, but it put us off on a much better footing. The third key principle is partnering with organizations like state orgs, like yourselves, community-based organizations, colleges, K-12. That was critical. We learned so much from all of you, and it was so critical to be able to leverage the talent and effort, and that really paid a ton of dividends. We partnered with over 70 organizations. Another big principle was we didn't, as you remember last year, they opened the submission and then later the processing. And the problem was with that stagger is they only learned that there were some processing issues like 3 months later when submission. So we wanted to have submission, processing, corrections, both student corrections and institutional corrections, open from October 1st, and it was, so we could find issues across the system. And if you go to the next slide, and the last principle I'll talk about is we wanted to partner with different types of orgs and reach different groups of students. So you can see on the left hand, you can see we worked with all sorts of high schools, public charter, private, preparatory, religious, urban, suburban, rural. So we had this sort of whole mix, and also with, you can see all the different post-secondary institutions, because we want to make sure we were experience each of these groups. The other thing is we looked at all the different populations, and we wanted critical mass in each population because their experience with the form would be very different. I'll tell you, a couple of weeks ago, one of my colleagues flew to Texas and went with a CBO in Texas who works with incarcerated students. And they went into a prison, and they had, I think, 19 students complete the paper 25-26 form. I got good news this morning. Those 19 have been processed. They were submitted and processed. And so we already have paper forms being used. So if you go to the next slide, the results of all that beta have been great. The beta, technically, beta 4 ended Monday, November, 2 weeks ago, Monday. So whatever that date was. And when we ended that, we had 167,000 applications submitted. A couple great pieces of feedback for us. One is there's a question where you can rate how was your experience, and from 1 to 5 scale. So 1 is not good, or bad, not good, neutral, good, very good, and 95% rated either 4 or 5, they're good or very good on their experience. What's even nicer is it's always hard to know how long, what is an appropriate expectation of time to complete the form. So we asked them, did the time it took to complete the form, and 90% plus said it was a reasonable, it was strongly either agreed or strongly agreed that it took a reasonable amount of time to complete the form, which is good feedback. Not only, again, did we do the apps, you can see 360,000 ICERs were created and sent to mailboxes of higher ed and state organizations. Close to 4,500 unique institutions received ICERs. 377 colleges had 100 or more, and that was important because we wanted them to have enough that they could ingest them. They had incentive to ingest them and process them to give us feedback to make sure there was no issues with the ICERs. Remember, again, that was an issue last year. We had students doing corrections, which was great because we want to make sure that was working. And again, we found no critical bugs. I will say we did learn a lot about existing bugs, and it enabled us to fix about 20 in late October. And we have a slate of another 40 that we're fixing in early December based on this experience. If you go to the next slide, I think I'm long on time, so I'll go quick. So beyond that, the third tier was providing both students and families, but also all of you tools. So Parent Wizard, an expanded prototype, a lot of different things of tools we gave in the hands, and based on feedback from you and others that I think have paid off. And if you haven't seen them, please take the time. You can skip to not next slide, but the slide after. And the last thing I'll say is there was a lot of investment on the contact center, call center, essentially double the capacity. And so far, so good. We haven't had any major, there's been no throttling, or and the abandonment rate is quite low. So that's in part because the form is easier and more intuitive, but also because of all the different layers we've added. So let me pause, and I can take questions. And right back to you.
So Jeremy, we do have a question from Ruben. He's asking, at this point, will you and the team that have been key to make all this progress continue in those roles and continue doing that, or will you be working with the incoming administration?
So first of all, the vast majority of the team is still going to be in place. Look at the whole FSA team and ed. The obviously politicals won't change with the admin. What I will say is we set up a structure and instantiated some process and ways of working that I think that I'm confident will live on. They've established both my role, and I brought our CTO, a wonderful human being named Jeff Olson from College Board. He joined me in the 6-month adventure, as well as many others. And they're creating full-time roles of like a FAFSA GM and then a technical person, which I think will go a long way to provide the needed leadership. And they have strong interim candidates they're going to announce this week. And then I think they have a strong pipeline of full-time candidates. So I think it's while myself and Jeff and others will roll off because we have other full-time jobs, I'm confident that the momentum that was built will be maintained as they go forward. And I would just say, like, that poor FSA team, for well over a year, they were in firefighting reactive mode. And for the first time, they're in a very planned, intentional role. Again, as I said at the beginning, there's still work to be done in the software. There's still user issues that need to be addressed. We haven't introduced batch corrections, which will be done in Q1. So there's still functionality, but also improvements. But at least now they're on a very intentional timeline to fix those and continue to make the application better.
Thank you. All right, any other questions for Mr. Singer? The Q&A is very active, but the questions are being responded to. And thank you, Joe, for coming in and also answering some of the questions. All right, thank you so much, Jeremy, for your presentation.
Let me say one last word. So thank you all for all the work you do. And I have one request for you, and some people have heard this before. One thing I've learned about government, and this may have been more extreme with FAFSA, sort of Obamacare, or similar trajectory, but typically year one is not great and it could be bad. Year two is better, but it's still not great. And I think we've righted that ship. But what I've learned in government with software is people have so much PTSD from year one that once it's okay or passable, they are like, let's not upset the apple cart, and they don't push for continued progress. And I think we will be doing a disservice to students and families who deserve the form can be even easier. The process can be even more intuitive. So I don't want to stop the pressure on making it better. And in my role as president of College Board, I'm going to keep a lot of pressure on, but I encourage all of you to keep demanding in a reasonable and respectful way that the team continues to build and make the forum really easy to use and great for all students and all families. We've taken some significant steps, but there's real work to be done. Sorry for that commercial, but I wanted to get that out. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for being with us, and we want to just express our gratitude for all the work you've been doing this past 6 months and having a stable and successful implementation of the 25-26 FAFSA. And this is your last week with FSA, so you get to go back to your regular job. And again, thank you so much. So as we transition to the portion of the webinar, we want to discuss a very, very important topic, focus on undocumented students and mixed status families. And to start this discussion, we will have opening remarks from the chair of our commission, Catalina Cifuentes. So Chair Cifuentes.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Jeremy. And I know there was continued questions that came in for Jeremy. So hopefully we'll be able to get those answered for you before you leave. If not, do a follow-up FAQ. It's so great to see everyone or see so many people jumped on. Catalina Cifuentes, the Executive Director of College and Career Readiness in Riverside County Office of Education, also the Chair of the California Student Aid Commission. And I'm just so grateful to the CSAC team for hosting these webinars. Obviously, you're hearing that that's going to be ongoing because so much information is coming and changing. I think one thing to remember in some of these questions that I saw is patience and understanding that we don't know some of these answers. And we may not know until we navigate new administration in Washington, how we navigate these decisions in Washington as a state. So, and I think many of the people here, some of these questions you've asked, we can't answer that. Questions about, one I saw on there was about, could we get in trouble if we advise students to submit their application? Just like anything we do when we are in a support arena, we encourage families to apply to college. We encourage families to submit their application, but we don't force them. So for them to come back and say, you made me do this, I don't think anyone here today does that. If student and family makes a decision to press submit, parents make that decision. Today's really about talking about the ifs. And I think we have to all be okay with it. We're going to be in the gray for a little bit, not knowing anything, what could happen or what could not happen. Many of you saw, I got tons of emails about recent information from NCAN, who sent out and said, hey, as of right now, we're still not certain how to advise our mixed families for submitting. As someone who came from a mixed family status myself, I didn't know my parents were undocumented and did not become citizens till I was almost 18. I was in that situation, and I've been around long enough before there was even a California DREAM Act, right? So I used to have to help students submit scholarships and essays so they can get funding to go to school because there wasn't even a DREAM Act when I started in my career in education. And so I've been on those both sides and what that's like. Yes, it's possible. It's a lot of work, but yes, it's possible to get your education funded through scholarships through great organizations like MALDEF, who offers so many opportunities for scholarships for students. And I've had plenty of students before the California DREAM Act that were dreamers that were able to get their funding. We also have now our mixed family students that were in this situation. And I think our job today is really just to give you tips on how to talk to families and how to talk to students and allow them to make that decision. Our role is to allow families to make an educated decision, give them the different rationales, the different things happening, but it's our job to make sure our families, our parents, our guardians exercise the custody and control of their students if they're minors, and then obviously our adult mixed family students that are in college now. One thing to keep in mind, I think when I'm working with students is a lot of the information that we're afraid they're afraid students have, they may have already. Right? So let me give you an example. My parents were undocumented, but from the moment they came to the United States and overstayed their visas, they continued to file taxes every year. They got no money in return. They got nothing back, and they filed every single year. And I did not know this until reflecting back, working with students, and I talked to my parents about this. They did this in hopes that if something did come up for immigration, for amnesty, they were able to become legal residents. And it was showing them that this was their commitment to being a part of America, to being part of California. So they paid. Every year they did taxes, and the IRS, they kept all of their money, all of their tax wages. They didn't get a return. They didn't get anything back. They did this for many years. So I would have been a mixed family student back then. My parents' information is already there. They were doing this. Many of our students right now their parents are doing the same thing my parents have done. They are filing taxes. They are doing this information. So their information is there. So that's a question I asked the family. Do you file taxes? Because if they do, they probably have your information right now as well. So these are some of the examples of how we're going to navigate working with every student. There's not going to be one way of doing this with every family, every student. So fast forward to when I became a teacher and I was helping students with their application, and I had called the IRS because this is how I learned my family was doing the same. I called the IRS because I couldn't understand how this undocumented family had been filing taxes. And why are they filing taxes if they're not even technically supposed to be in the United States? And what the IRS told me was they see it as they're only breaking one law instead of two. They're breaking the law of being here illegally, but at least they're paying taxes. And so I think many of us just have to really educate ourselves on what that looks like for some families. Some of them are working with attorneys to get legal residency, so they're doing these things. Some of them have older siblings that already went to college and have been doing filing taxes and submitting a FAFSA for the last 2 or 3 years because the older sister or brother or sibling is in school. So I think this conversations and the continued conversations we're going to have is about navigating all of these scenarios. I think we learned a lot about our students last year with the Better FAFSA. It really forced us to ask a lot of uncomfortable questions because of the new questioning mechanism on the application. I had to start off almost every conversation I had with a parent, or if I was at a school, to say, okay, I'm going to ask you some questions about, a little bit more detail than I would have in the past, but I need you to be comfortable with, I'm trying to help you get your application submitted. So many of us navigated that. And I know you're going to hear from 2 of our CalSUP programs in just a moment. But I think it's important for us to know that we're going to be in the gray. We're not forcing anyone to submit an application. That is never your role when you're supporting a student and family. Let them exercise the custody and control of their children. Let them exercise their choice to submit or not submit. But with anything, we do have to navigate. Every scenario is different. And to blanketly say, don't submit, I would be cautious of that as well, because there could be other rationales or reasons, like I just shared from my own personal experience, learning that about my family and going back to, I didn't know about my parents filing taxes like that all those years until I actually navigated the situation with my own students when I first started in education. So I'm happy to go ahead and we're going to turn it over to here. This webinar hopefully is to get the updates from Jeremy, but really focusing on undocumented mixed status families. Just tips and tricks on what to do as we support our students, support our families. Like I said, I'm looking at the Q&A and trying to help. I know we're nervous about some of these upcoming decisions, but our role is to keep calm and be, I will say, never more proud of our governor and our legislature to rally together to try to do everything we can to send the message. These are our students. We've been educating many of them since they were kindergartners, since they were in preschool. These are U.S. citizens. Many of them have been here. They don't know anything other than the United States, than California. And to know that our state is going to do the extra and do everything we can to protect our students. I share that with you, as well as Dr. Gonzalez. Together with the CSAC team, we are going to do everything we can possible to protect our students, to protect our families, to protect our state. So with that, I'll go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Jake Brimner, who's going to talk about the 2 presenters, and we're here to help you. And like I say, this is not a race. This is going to be a marathon, partner. So hang with us together, and we'll get through this together.
Thank you so much, Chair Cifuentes. Appreciate your leadership and your commitment to our students, both down in Riverside County and here across the state and the work we're doing at the Student Aid Commission. I'm going to be very brief on introductions here because really I'm eager to pass it over to our two colleagues, two student champions. We're working locally through our CalSOAP program, our California Student Opportunity and Access Program, bringing together local partners in Riverside County and in Los Angeles to help bring financial aid awareness, financial aid application assistance, and help navigating that college going process to students. And two colleagues that I know have really looked at how they can empower students and families to navigate those questions that Chair Cifuentes was just speaking to. So with that, I'm going to pass it over first to Matthew Elder, who's our CalSOAP project director down in Riverside County, and then to Isel Baez, who's our CalSOAP program director in Los Angeles.
Hey, thank you, Jake. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Matthew Elder, Director of Riverside County CalSOAP. Definitely want to share what everybody's discussing is with our CalSOAP program, we work with 7 districts and 35 high schools. We hire college students to be the resources for our high school students. We work with first generation low-income foster and homeless youth. And we have a lot of partnerships that we work with our school sites, with our admin teams, our counselors, and the different organizations that we partner with. One of the organizations that we partnered with in the past here in Riverside County and does a great job is the Todek Legal Center. When we started working, doing the workshops, doing all this financial aid push for our students to get that free money that they deserve, we always talk about, everybody talks about FAFSA, FAFSA, FAFSA. Well, when I was doing this as an administrator at my former high school, we talked about financial aid because it was FAFSA and California Dream Act. I think that's an important thing that we don't leave the California Dream Act out. And one of the partners that I made with was working with Luis Gallegos, the executive director at Kodak Legal Center here in Paris, because they would come to our workshops. We'd have Saturday workshops, evening workshops, different things, working with students, and they have all the resources of working with the community. They do different things with free legal clinics. They do the DACA, they do the California Dream Act. They provide a lot towards U.S. citizenship. So they have a lot of expertise. They're located here in Paris. They also have other locations that they branched out recently in the Coachella Valley and the high desert in San Bernardino County. But we would invite them to every single workshop that we had at my former district. And what they would do is they would sit there and talk to families and give them the peace of mind and the way to walk through the systems and how to do the California Dream Act. They would train the counseling teams, and they work with multiple districts in our area now as we've gotten multiple years into the work that we've done. But they were a huge resource of having one partner just like that. Catalina mentioned MalDef. I know Giselle was going to mention Immigrants Rising and different things that we've worked with the different partners. But if you have never heard of Todek, please go to the website, reach out to them. Their contact information is right there. Luz is an amazing partner that we worked with many years in the past, and just working through the misinformation or working through how to get more people to walk through the application of the California Dream Act, and just having a resource where parents and families could go to their office on different days or have somebody to call other than the school sites is a huge resource and partnership. So just wanted to share what they offer there at Todek. So please go to their website, take a look at the different resources they have, take a look at their team, the different contact. They have so many services. You could also sign up for their listserv. I get emails, recent updates every single week, just different resources that they have and things that are coming down the line. So definitely, please, if you have a partner like this in your area, please utilize their resources because they do a great work working with our families. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Giselle, in LA.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Good morning, everybody. So happy to be here with all of you this morning, just talking briefly about what we're experiencing here in Los Angeles, some of the partnerships that we are re-engaging, just really taking into consideration that in a way, just like Chair Cifuentes said, we've been here before. We have all of the battle wounds from Better FAFSA rollout, and so we've had some of these conversations with our families. Maybe they're going to take a different flavor now, but you know, we keep working with our students and our families. Similar to what Matt mentioned, we also have our student success coaches. Here in LA, we work with 19 different high schools, and we have staff at those 19 high schools. But we also have a very small field team that is able to go out and do presentations for families, for students. And so if you're in the LA area and you would like to look at our website and schedule one of these workshops or presentations, we would be more than happy to accommodate. But really just thinking about working with students in mixed status families or undocumented students, we hire college students ourselves that are going through very similar situations. So it's kind of a layered onion, right? Where we really have to make our student success coaches and have them feel really comfortable with going out and having these conversations. So I'm sure that Matthew in Riverside, just like we do here in Los Angeles, we provide a lot of support and training to our student success coaches to be able to go out and have these conversations and really tailor them to each family. I know that like when I say that we're at 19 high schools, sometimes it's just hard to really imagine how big and how vast Los Angeles is, and we can only have these conversations with these one-on-ones with very like few families when we really think about the scope of the need. But we partner and we're re-engaging partners like CHIRLA, the Coalition for the Coalition for Human Immigrants' Rights here in Los Angeles. So we, in 2016, during the first Trump administration, we really leaned on them to help give us some support and some assistance. So we are definitely working with those partners, re-engaging them, really having those conversations, as well as advocacy partners. Here in LAUSD, Families in Schools, which is our previous fiscal agent for CalSOAP LA, really did a lot of work around bringing materials to families on how to deal with government agencies, right? And so we are really thinking, and I've already reached out, and they really want, just like we need the support of some of these advocacy agencies, they also need our support to know what's going on the ground, right? And so really starting this dialogue and these conversations as to what we're hearing from families, from students, what their fears are, so then we can be able to pull all of our resources and materials and be able to bring those to families. So, and just like Matthew mentioned, Immigrants Rising. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. Immigrants Rising is doing some great work in this space where we just pull flyers, we pull materials. I really liked what President-elect Lorena Rodriguez said about having a unified message. And so we really want to be able to pick from these organizations and people that are experts in this space, right? We are one program that does financial aid and that really has access to families, that has gained the trust of families and students, but we really want to make sure that we're utilizing the support services of people like Immigrants Rising. And we have a budding relationship with El Consulado de Mexico. So really trying to put the messaging out there that although we are small, CalSOAP LA is here to really put out this information and to help families as best as we can. So I know we're running out of time, but if anyone, I will put down our website. If you are in the LA area once again and would like a presentation and some support, I would really welcome you to look at our website. So thank you so much.
Thank you both for what you're doing for our students and families, but also for sharing some of these best practices. And really, I think what I'm hearing are the need to connect your staff, but most importantly, your students and families with these other resources. So it's about empowering our students and families and empowering your colleagues to know where these resources exist. So I just have a few very quick slides I'm going to speed through so that we can wrap up here and hopefully let you out close to on time. Why this is so important, I think many of you here today already realize this. We have a really large share of our student population in California who are going to be grappling with these questions. More than 12% of California high school students have one or more parent who don't have a social security number. And we realized this past year as we were navigating that new, better FAFSA related process around identity verification and validation for those individuals who didn't have a social security number. And at the same time, we're still grappling with, as some of our colleagues pointed out in the chat, multi-year declines in how many California DREAM Act applicants are applying for financial aid. And we've seen that really since 2017 and the rescission of the DACA program, a very clear correlation there. So what does this mean for our work at the Student Aid Commission? On the next slide, what I want to highlight that we already have available now on our website are new resources to help communicate to our undocumented students about the availability of the California DREAM Act, the safety and California state law that helps protect their privacy, both at the Student Aid Commission and how we utilize data, but also for how our colleges and universities utilize data. We also have resources that you can print out and distribute to students. Those are all available on the same website, and we'll make sure we drop that in the chat here. We will have more resources of this kind coming out very soon for our mixed status families and for students that are going to be navigating these really nuanced questions that the chair spoke to and that we've been talking about here today about how we empower those students with information to understand the benefits of applying for federal financial aid, but also to start to think about what risk they might have in applying for that and to consider some of those same points that the chair raised around, is this new information that's being shared? Is this not new information? And how do they think about that relative to the risk for themselves or their families potentially? So then on this last slide, before I'll pass it over to our Chief Deputy Director, I want to just note, and some of this was already shared in the chat earlier, so I'll be brief. The Student Aid Commission has already been putting forth guidance to remind our colleagues across the state about those laws that already protect student data and confidentiality, particularly for our California DREAM Act applicants. We also had updated information that really speaks to the role that the California DREAM Act can play in serving those students that are not comfortable taking that potential risk of sharing information with the federal agency at this time. So you can find these all on our website. We encourage you to share them with your colleagues. And again, we will have more information and resources coming soon, not only another guidance memo, but again, those resources that are more student and family friendly and are intended to help our partners across the state who are doing the work of assisting students in applying for college and being able to really communicate that concisely. So with that, I am now, for the sake of time, I hope we were able to get to most of the questions either in the chat or I know that our colleagues here just responded to some of those already. So I will pass it over now to our Chief Deputy Director, Catalina Missler.
Thank you. And we're great, rich news today and information from all levels, state, federal, on the ground, our CalSOAP project programs, and just an opportunity to learn a lot. So hoping that all of you will continue to be interested in joining our next webinars. So here's some reminders. 25-20 for the 25-26 that just started yesterday. Check out the new CSAC homepage resources. We have everything in the all-in and ready for FAFSA-CADA landing page. You can find out more about our financial aid workshops, the train the trainer, all our FAQs, and we want to put as we develop new materials, we'll be adding them to this page. So please make sure that you use that as a resource. As Jake just mentioned, the new undocumented students landing page is a resource for you. So continue to check out our homepage for additional resources. And also track the FAFSA-CADA submission rates. The Race to Submit dashboard for high schools. You can look to see how your schools, your districts, your counties are doing in the submission and completion of FAFSA and CADAs, and then be able to do something about it. Be able to visit a high school that's not doing well, or contact CSAC or your CalSOAPs to see how you can help those schools increase their FAFSA-CADA rates. Sign up for the listserv we have here at CSAC. So you can go to our website, you can sign up for the listserv, you can get all up-to-date information on changes to our programs, application deadlines, and messages from our executive director. And then, of course, our Cash for College webinars. These are scheduled online and in person, and they inform students and families get hands-on help in completing the FAFSA and the CADA. So go to our all-in website and check out the dates. Next slide. And then here's our upcoming 2025 webinar schedule. So the next one is January 9th, 2025. Our theme is reaching students at scale. You'll continue to hear about our partners on the ground and the work that they're doing to extend and their work and help those high schools and students that need assistance in completing their FAFSA and CADA. So I will now hand it over to our executive director to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Catalina. It is 10. We are going to end on time, everyone. And we just want to say thank you for joining us for our first webinar. As we work to extend that deadline, I want to make sure that I correct myself. Deadline extension and the advocacy that we're doing is for April 2nd. As we do that work, I wanted you to hear from the community that's supporting you behind the scenes. So thank you to all of our speakers for today. The team behind the scenes from CSAC who was answering all the questions. Thank you. And please join me in thanking them. We know what we have to do here. We know we are all in. Yes, we are ready, but I want to remind you why we are doing this, and that's our students. So if we know what we have to do, we know that it is going to be hard and there will be many challenges, as our chair, Catalina Cifuentes, mentioned, but you're not doing this alone. We hope you join us again for our next webinar, and please give us your feedback and sign up for the webinar series. Welcome to December, and welcome to what really today starts the rest of our cycle as we head to the finish line to make sure that our students don't give up on their dreams. So thank you, everyone. Have a great week.